Hello and welcome back. It's August and that means another edition of the Microsoft Teams show. The Teams ecosystem is continuing to move fast, so let's connect and break down what's new. I'm Kristian McCann from UC Today, joined by Tom Arbuthnot from Empowering Cloud and our excellent panel of Microsoft Teams experts who know the space inside and out. We also do have a special guest, Robbie Warwick, talking about some of his experiences in the Teams trenches. So stay tuned for that later. But for now, let's go to our panel and discuss the news. It's great to have everyone here today. Tom, how are things looking in your world this month?
Yeah, it's been fairly busy. So last month was the Microsoft new start of financial year. So their financial year runs July to June. So we got lots of changes inside of Microsoft in terms of roles and objectives, and that's still kind of ongoing. And we got Microsoft's end of year quarterly earnings as well. They kind of smashed it out of the park on that, both on AI and Azure. So really, it's a period where we're looking at what Microsoft are focusing on for the coming year. But even so, features continue to drip through across Teams and Copilot.
Yeah, well, talking about features or capabilities, one of the crazy stories we've heard is that a Mercedes now has Teams enabled, so you can take a call whilst you're driving. This is one of an outlandish one, but Microsoft seem to think that people will make their cockpit the new meeting room. Graham, what do you think about this?
I think in plain English, a recipe for disaster. Trying to do trying to do audio calls on the car is bad enough. You are losing that little bit of concentration. And to do video calls is just, I think, insane. Parked up is great. You can do that, if you're at a service station, lay-by or whatever. But to do video real time, taking your eyes, maybe, someone might be showing you, hey, look at my new battery charger. And then your eyes go off the road for a millisecond. That's not good in my eyes.
Yeah, the key thing here is it does obviously work parked up. When you're moving, you, the driver, are on video to the other attendees, but you can't see the other attendees. So it drops the visible for the driver video feed. If you're in drive, you can only get two-way if you're in park. But nevertheless, when you're driving down the motorway or whatever, you can remain on video should you want to, which is interesting.
I think that's the conscious part, that you're on video. So even though you can't see the far end, I think it's still an issue.
Yeah, it seems. I kind of agree. It seems like it's more like the technology can than it's needed. I think good audio is more important in the car. But it's also Intune and Copilot coming through as well. So it feels like they're really heavily invested in kind of bringing Microsoft ecosystem into the car experience.
I think for the let's call it on the go travel in our cars, we just want easy join, like a one-click join button like we have in rooms. That's what you need in the car. I remember back in the day, I shouldn't say this, but I may have done. Trying to join a bridge with like 13-digit PIN code, trying to look at your cell phone, trying to put that number in when you didn't have this easy one-click join. That's all we need. That's good enough. Just get a seamless experience, whether it's in CarPlay, Android Auto, whichever mode it's in. That's all we need. We don't need to go further, apart from obviously video calls. But if we are parked up,
yeah, I think parked makes sense, doesn't it? Because you like very often you say you're traveling, you can put into the services and do a call. You've got great AV there, hopefully. So why not rather than doing it off your phone?
Well, what'll be interesting to see, because there's another platform provider that offers this in another car, but it's a premium feature. So will you have to subscribe to Mercedes premium features to get
quite possibly.
Well, talking about more seamless features, Microsoft is adding a new search for Teams, an SQL-style search to Teams. Is this going to drastically improve search? Also, why did it take so long to be able to add this small feature that other platforms perhaps had for a long time?
Yeah, so I'm going to take this because, so first of all, there's this with clause, this in clause. Yes, SQL has that, but anybody that actually knows structured query language, it has nothing to do with SQL. I feel this is the marketing people, right? It's not really SQL.
I don't know. I reckon it's pure developers. I'm sure nobody in marketing would have said, let's call it SQL-like search.
But I think, I don't know, because they should have called it like Outlook-like searching, because Outlook has had this. And here's the problem with Microsoft with this. This isn't a bad thing. You can say in and then specify a channel or from and colon, whatever. You already, like, they've had so many kicks at the can in terms of search. And, right now you already have all these different filters and, you can specify a person or there's different filters, whether it's a channel or what have you. I think at the end of the day, most users don't know any of these capabilities, right? And where are we with what happened to this whole natural language thing? Like Copilot, just like tell me what you want, right? So show me all the messages that Tom sent me in the last week that had to do with, a particular topic, right? So and the other thing is I did a little bit of research and, the way things are working, it's different on slightly different platforms, at least according to the documentation, right? So, whether it's on a Mac or Windows. So anyway, I think there was this whole Microsoft search. There's been many, different search attempts. And for the most part, I think users just don't use any of these fancy keywords. They just type things in. And I would rather it move to having Copilot return better results. But, hey, if to your point, Tom, if the developers came up with SQL-like search that actually has nothing to do with syntax like SQL, I guess more power to them, but there's too many different forms of search.
Right, well, staying with you, Kevin, another feature that's come out for Teams, threaded conversations. What do we think? Is Microsoft taking more from Slack these days, or is this actually adding a lot of value to people's workflows?
So I'm going to give a short comment, then I'm going to throw it open as a question because I often do comparisons around different AI assistants and different platforms because I think that that's super powerful. So if Microsoft product managers, the multitude of them that dream up all kinds of different searches, if they're looking at Slack and saying, hey, this is a really good feature, let's bring it into Teams, fantastic. I think, go borrow, do the competitive research. But, so I have no problem with this. I guess the question to the panel is, these new features, have people been using Teams for so long now that they're entrenched in their ways? Do these new features bring capabilities or confusion?
Both probably is the answer.
That's the easy answer, Tom. Come on.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like Microsoft's really trying to find new ways to get people to embrace channels as opposed to chat. We kind of know the dominant use of Teams is actually chats rather than channels because people are used to that paradigm of creating a chat group. So I think this is another attempt to make channels feel more useful. And I've been using Threaded and it's quite nice. But to your point, if users are already embedded in the kind of forum methodology that Teams uses for channels today, it's quite a jarring change. And I think one of the most challenging bits is channel owners can choose on a per channel basis. So some group might use Threads, some other group might use forum. That's more confusing, I think, because now at an org level, different channels work in different ways.
Well, I think this hyper personalization, like whether it was the new chat and channels experience where everybody could kind of, change that up, or as you say, you can configure these capabilities, different in different contexts. I think of the poor support person that's trying to help somebody. It's like you have to ask 50 questions to understand how their Teams client is configured before you tell them what they should click on, right? So I think that sometimes these new features are making it arguably more complex as opposed to your very nice answer that it's both, right? So
I think that what they're trying to do is obviously a lot of people are resistant to change. So if they're used to using Slack and they do it one way, and you want to get them to Teams on an enterprise level, you've got to give them this flexibility. So I don't know, the R&D team can have Threads, and the marketing team can have, just chat or whatever. And I think that's their problem, is that they're trying to win over everyone in the org because everyone is doing different ways of working. But as you say, Kevin, it's going to be a complete nightmare then to try and support it and then troubleshoot it.
But that's a good point, Graham. Like if indeed it is kind of, hey, let's try to offer a feature that migrates over some of the last holdouts, because there are a lot of organizations that use Teams and Slack. So I think that's a great point that you bring up.
Right. Well, moving on, talking about nightmares, SharePoint breach happened and it made major headlines. Of course, you had intelligence agencies in the UK and US talking about the effect that it could have on some people using Microsoft Suite. It was on premise, but there was talk that it could affect people using Teams if their configuration was so set up to that. Would this attack make anyone perhaps rethink the knock-on effects of their wider Microsoft 365 stack? Would it change anyone from being on-prem?
I think if anything, it would accelerate to the cloud because you don't want it to be your problem. That's the big thing. Is that to kind of go back to the issue, this is internet-facing SharePoint servers, so it didn't hit M365 or online. It is SharePoint server, and specifically ones that were exposed directly to the internet, which I would have thought was a fairly niche scenario. I mean, back in the day, people used to build workflows and stuff directly to the internet. I thought it was rare. Evidently, it's not as rare as I thought it was. And this is kind of the worst kind of exploit because this is I can remotely from the if the SharePoint is exposed remotely, I can take it over completely and take over the server directly remotely without any user engagement. So Microsoft have issued patches, but the problem is, it's very often people on-prem who have a SharePoint server running that nobody really looks after, that they've left exposed to the internet. They're the types of organizations that might not have the best patching and process around it. So yeah, it's kind of another one of those things where if you do choose to run on-prem infrastructure, particularly if you want to face it out to the internet, you've really got to be on your game with patching. And even then, even if you were top of your game with patching and operations, this was still exposed for a decent amount of time before Microsoft and everybody caught on and patched it. So yeah, it's a tough one, but now it's kind of one of those problems of trying to get around all the customers to make sure they do patch so that it's not exposed and those servers are not taken over.
It'd be interesting to know how many on-prem SharePoint there still is.
Yeah, a lot. I expect is the answer. I mean, SharePoint's interesting.
It's a lot to move.
Yeah, it did some crazy advanced things on-prem because you completely own the server, and online, SharePoint Online never fully matched what you could do on-prem because obviously it's different in a multi-tenant cloud infrastructure. So there are use cases still for SharePoint Server where developers took advantage of the advanced capabilities. Yeah, they built custom stuff. They had raw access to the server that isn't the same as online, but yeah, I was surprised how many are exposed to the internet. That's just like this is directly exposed to the internet. So
it's your intranet. The clue's in the name. It's your intranet.
yeah. Well, they did used to do. They supported kind of websites and pages, and obviously if you built a workflow or a form. But I mean, I've been through some of these security audits with customers and both at Empowering Cloud, and the security audits are insane. And then it's like, oh, it's the people that look after the nuclear weapons registry in America have SharePoint online, SharePoint on server directly on the internet. Okay, cool. But yeah, I think
the back.
yeah. I think it just goes to show if you're going to stick on-prem, which is a valid strategy, you've got to have top-notch operations to deal with this pace of potential issues.
Okay, moving on to some Copilot development. So Copilot Vision, it can now see everything on your screen. Could this be a surface level enter silos? Ryan, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think this is pretty exciting. Again, this at this stage is is more on the consumer side. So I think Windows 10, Windows 11, Edge browser, Copilot on mobile device, but super. We were talking about a support scenario with Teams, for example. I just imagine kind of turning this thing on and having a voice conversation, and it's helping me figure out how to go reconfigure Teams and putting a little circle around what I need to click on. Just very, very similar to an active support session that I could be having, or on a mobile side, being able to use my camera and being out in the garden and having it guide me through, exactly what I need to do. So the vision is exciting, and I think kind of we're starting to see this same ability to share a screen that we have inside some of the M365 and kind of business side of Copilot. But yeah, this is same technology. It maybe even more so, kind of more sophisticated technology being deployed on the consumer side, that is pretty consistent with the way a lot of us are using these tools in our personal life, and interesting. So yeah, it can see what I can see on my camera or through a screen share, and it could annotate, it can comment. We could be continuing a conversation on the voice side. So pretty exciting. It's and also exciting that it's not exclusively reserved to Copilot Pro. Some of this functionality is available just with standard Copilot logged in with a personal account.
Okay, Tom, what do you think? Copilot Vision AI, something really to be excited about? What's the business use cases?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because I mean, potentially this is really a great way for Copilot to help you. So I know a lot of people spend a lot of time going into an app, doing something, pasting the error, pasting the screenshot. Imagine if Copilot could just be over your shoulder, coaching you on how to use the app, how to make things better, because it can see exactly what's going on. So hopefully a really useful feature, but a ton of InfoSec, GDPR, where's the data, how's it stored, where's it go, all that stuff suddenly gets really interesting, because it's literally potentially taking a scrape of your full screen to understand it. So no doubt the InfoSec implications will be big as well.
Okay, moving on to Microsoft Teams Contact Center. Center Power becomes the first official Microsoft Teams Unified Certified Contact Center. Tom, what does this mean for Teams as a CCaaS?
Yeah, this was really interesting, because CenterPower were not actually one of the original names mentioned by Microsoft who were early access into this new certification. So to roll back, there are 3 supported integrations to Teams for contact centers: Connect, Extend, and Unify. Unify is using Azure Communication Services, so the same underlying infrastructure as Teams. And there is a new certification to go with Unify. A bunch of the players you would expect are currently going through that process, but CenterPower are the first. It doesn't really change kind of the options. You've still got Microsoft kind of have some basic native options with their inbuilt auto-attendant call queues and their queues app. Then you've got these different ecosystem options. Then you've got Dynamics 365 and kind of other contact centers outside of Teams. But this is a new way to tightly integrate to the Teams infrastructure, though not necessarily the Teams client, interestingly, actually using Teams infrastructure. So I expect we'll see a few more of these certified in the coming months. I know there are a few more pending as well.
Right. Well, there's going to be a raft of updates for Microsoft Places. Tom, can we go through those? So there's Places web portal, there's map-based booking, Places desk modes. What can you tell us all about that?
Yeah, so we just got a bunch of messenger messages all around Places. So Places has been a kind of a bit of a slow roll in terms of its potential. And one of the gaps has been a UI-based, web-based kind of admin experience. It's all been PowerShell to date. So this is coming in with a web-based management experience, also being able to pick locations to book desks based on maps, which is something people have been wanting. And then on the desk booking, different statuses for desk booking as well. So we'll share the links if you want to go detailed into each of those features. But kind of, I guess the headline is there continues to be progress and development in Places. And as part of Teams Premium, it's one of the big workloads Microsoft are going to be pushing and talking about into this new FY26. So I expect to see more development happening on Places over this year.
Okay, and speaking of developments, metered graph APIs will no longer incur charges. What can you tell us about that as well, Tom?
Yeah, this is a funny one. So I can't remember exactly when it started, but it's been a good while going and a lot of debate kind of internally and with the MVPs at Microsoft. But essentially, Microsoft came up with these graph API scenarios that were meters, as in they were costed when you used them. And the basic picture in Microsoft was, this is not about restricting access to your data. These APIs add additional capabilities and value. So one of the ones was being able to back up Teams chat and channels and all that data in a very efficient, high throughput way. So you could do it today without that API. but it was hard work. You were basically pulling message by message, channel by channel. And there were a few other scenarios, getting transcripts and some other bits and pieces. Microsoft have now dropped those charges, so they're still called metered APIs, confusingly, but there's going to be no charge associated with them, which is great for customers and for developers because it means new, better ways to get to that data, particularly in the age of AI. Things like being able to get to the transcriptions and the data in chat and channels could be really, really useful. Something happened with Slack around APIs and charging and getting some blowback. So I think there might be something around that Microsoft just thought it's not really worth the incremental charges for this use case, and we want to not block any AI development as well. So yeah, good news for customers.
Okay, excellent. I think that's a good place to wrap up our news. We're almost ready to move on to our special guest, but before we do that, Tom, events, August can be a bit of a lull, but have you heard anything on your side?
Yeah, still relatively quiet for kind of in-person events, but we do have lots of online stuff happening. So we have our usual Teams Fireside Chat, which this month, August the 14th, we're going into actually the Dynamics 365 Contact Center and how that uses the Azure Communication Services platform and kind of the Unify architecture, if you like, but specifically how that Dynamics 365 Contact Center works. So that should be really interesting. We have the regular Microsoft Teams devices Ask Us Anything session, which is a whole bunch of great MVPs get together, including Graham, and just open the floor on all the Teams devices news and get into the detail there. So that's really, really good. And then looking a bit further out, September the 24th, we have our Microsoft UC User Group London. Neat are hosting us at their new Experience Center, so looking forward to that. And the next in-person that I think is the big one is UC Expo in London, which is 1st and 2nd of October. And actually, Robbie's going to be there talking as well as myself and a few other familiar faces. So looking forward to that.
That's a great segue into our guest. So
you see how seamless that was? I'm glad you appreciate that.
So, Robbie, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on. And it's a beautiful day here at Fenchurch Street in London. So happy to be here, feeling good. Let's see what questions you have.
Right. Well, I'll give the audience a brief intro. So Robbie has worked across public and private sectors in various guises within the communication era for 20 years. Recently leading PBX to Skype, to Teams voice and video transformation at the UK's Home Office, running Random Creation House, and now as a UCAS and CCAS transformation leader at Accenture. Today he'll be sharing lessons from across his career, including that Microsoft case study. So to start from the beginning, that Microsoft case study, when you're planning major communication migrations, what key factors do you consider from a customer experience perspective?
Yeah, of course. So that case study, what a great case study that was. And I don't think I've ever had a case study go quite so broad as the one that Microsoft did on the program that I ran for the UK Home Office. Big numbers, big handfuls, billion audio minutes per year, 60,000 users, more than 200 sites, of course, many of their users during the pandemic period working from home. Really a big organization, big sprawling organization that developed and grown over time, had different ways of working, and had a lot of different sort of people, different personalities. And I think when you come at a challenge like that, question number one is always the Simon Sinekism. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. You really got to understand, why are we moving from ISDN-based PBXs to a unified comms platform, and really getting to grips with that. It's not just that we want video conferencing. It's not just that we want to put a phone inside your PC. It's that we want to connect people in a better way. We want to give them better tools. We want to make their communication experience richer. So I think, job number one when you're thinking about doing big transformation is, why are you trying to move? It's about making sure that you do understand the perspective of the other side. And how do we get ourselves into a position where we can speak authoritatively about what they do and don't like, so we can make decisions for them, with them at pace, and then hold ourselves accountable for the decisions we've made. So that's aside from all the technical things we would normally think about, how are we going to do quads, how are we going to do union, how are we going to do like number management, because we've already got those things. We've got mechanisms to deal with those things. For me, the focus that we sometimes miss is actually what does the user need? If we've got a blind user, how are they going to interact, and how do we make sure that we've considered their needs? We've got users in response groups, call queues. How do we think about how those people are going to move? So it's about thinking from the perspective of the user, and getting those basics right. Because I think if you get those right, the rest of it sort of follows.
Okay, well, keeping the user central to the next question, what are the most common adoption challenges you encounter when you need to shift users from perhaps the old PBX tools to these new platforms?
Yeah, there's this sort of an age-old challenge. I think I've seen this in every single unified comms migration I've ever done, which is you ask a user to use a headset and they just say no. I don't want to use a headset. I've got a desk phone. The desk phone is fine. I used to hear a lot, I don't work in a call center. And you're like, what's wrong with people who work in call centers? I worked in a call center. I like people who work in call centers, so what's wrong with them? You still get that pushback. Actually, when you can replay back to them that you can have a whole load of cool new stuff. We can give you a Teams phone mobile. We can give you Teams in your computer. We can give you Teams on your desk phone. And also you can log into a Teams device in a meeting room. Like when we can start to show that and show the benefit that comes with that, the tiny bit of change to me and you, and maybe some other people find those a bit more difficult. But once we can get across to those people that, the features you're going to get, the simplicity you're going to get, you're not going to notice us anymore because it's so simple. People start to change their minds and become way more open to, as we'll probably talk in a minute, a lot more risk than maybe they would have done had you not considered those things.
So I see how you can perhaps sell the idea of this transformation when you're at the end product. But what about when, you're in the middle of it, people's workflows are being disrupted? How do you communicate and support people's daily workflows during this transformation? And, how do you manage expectations, especially if things are running behind or they're changing?
It's difficult, isn't it? And I think sort of product leads, project leads all have a slightly different appetite here. My appetite is ripping off the plaster. And I think if you've got an organization behind you that's up for that, it's a very effective way to minimize the pain. And the way I look at this is you've got 6 months or 12 months to do a migration. What do you want to be doing in that period? Do you want to be, explaining to them how to know how to do interop with people who are on the different platform? Do you want to be passing that burden on to the end user, or do you want to be getting just rip off the plaster, get the job done? And if you're going to do that, if you're going to compress that sort of 6 months of pain into a short period, actually you get more time. You get 3 or 4 months back to really get the processes right, to automate, to build personalized communications, build real-time communications, and to minimize the journey that the user's going on. And I think that if you can minimize that, I don't think this, I know this because this is how I've migrated a number of organizations, and it's nearly universally well received, is actually they just want the job done. They want it gone and out of the way, and they don't want us asking them to carry the workload that we could have done for them. So what do you communicate? How do you communicate it? You communicate that, hey, we dog fooded this. We've been using this product. We're confident in it. We're so confident in it. That's all we use now. We've got the advantages and the benefits. We've got a service hub. We've got our Teams phone mobiles. We're now adopting this thing. You are behind. So let's get to you all of those benefits. Let's show you how we're going to migrate. Show you what our thoughts are. Show you the risks we're avoiding about having split response groups and all those sorts of things, and get those users bought in, and just keep them up to date. It's a bit of a misquote Tony Blairism, right? Communicate. If you work in unified communications, it's kind of the clue is there for you in the title. Just keep communicating to users, keep explaining to them, what you're doing, how you're doing it, what you're going to get access to. And in our case, we had a great one, which was the Remembrance event, which used to be very London centric. You had to be there to experience it. And we just started broadcasting it through, I think, Teams live events, Skype broadcast before that. And people started to see that actually you've got to be in this platform now to be able to participate. I can participate, and all I need to do is just log into that app, just learn how to use it. That, to me, is getting the communications right, getting those messages across to those end users. That's the thing that makes these migrations a success.
Okay, moving on to the more technical aspects of the migration. How did you leverage tools like communication bots and automated provisioning to make complex migrations manageable? Yeah. And what strategies would you recommend for someone planning a similar transformation?
Yeah, so I've used this model a few times, this just-in-time communication piece. And I remember sitting in a room with Microsoft when we first started to plan my last migration. In fact, the last 2 or 3 migrations that I've done, and I've said, I just want to press a button and walk away. Not quite that, but that's what I want to do. I don't want lots of spreadsheets, V1, V2, V3, use this one, V4, deleted the last one. We don't want that, because you end up forking your migration packs. For me, that kind of automation, that automated rollout, that automated backout if you need to, the automated messaging to users that's very personalized, very easy to do at scale. That to me is how you can then take more risk. Because if you want to delay migration for a day, all you do is you just don't start it. And what you haven't done is send a message out, an email out to users 4 weeks ago saying your migration is exactly on the 1st of December, and then it becomes the 2nd. You actually just said it's going to happen sometime this month. I'm going to message you just before. And if you happen to be online when we start, we'll just drop you out. You can send those sorts of messages and have your scripts just restack as a powerfully effective way to transition. And you can build your business logic into it. And I would recommend that kind of approach to anybody. And I think we did at my last place open source that code, or we certainly passed it back to Microsoft to be able to use it at other organizations when they agreed to take that risk on us and go through that journey with us.
Well, picking your brain for other recommendations, based on your different experience across different environments, what organizational, technical, and cultural prerequisites are essential for a successful, rapid migration? And when would you recommend against an aggressive timeline?
I think people should always consider that very fast cutover. I think it's very easy to say, hey, you know what, we'll take our time, we'll do it over 12 months or 18 months, because it's easy to say it's somebody else's responsibility to work out how to interop, and that's kind of easy. I think when you start talking about one-day migration or a few hours migration, it makes you think about efficiency, and it makes you think about what could possibly go wrong, because you're then on the hook to fix it. If 20,000 users start ringing your service desk, you're now an unhappy day. So it really focuses the mind. I think everyone should consider that single step cutover, even if they use that process over a more extended period, because it does make you think from the user perspective about things that could go wrong. And it gets you into that mindset of test, validation, improvement. So you've got to have an organization behind you that's up for it, though. There's no point going to a very, very, very risk averse organization and say, hey, we're going to take some risk, because they will say no. You've got to show to them that it's not that high risk because you've tested, because you've got confidence in your process. But you've got to have some buy-in from them. Where you lose the organization is when people start saying things like, I got Dave to sign it off. It's like, what you actually did is you just threw Dave under a bus if you got it wrong. So I think you've got to be really confident in your capabilities and the capabilities of your team, the capabilities of your product. And you've got to have great relationships with your vendors. Thinking about that assignment, that organization, we had some fantastic relationships with our supplier base, with Microsoft, where we could have kind of quite blunt conversations because we had those established relationships. And we could go to people like Ilya Buckstein and say, I don't like this thing, and have a robust conversation about whether we should change, whether he should change, whether something else should change. Normally, the view is that I should change, in Ilya's fantastically direct way. And it's having those relationships is how you get the confidence to, be able to move at that sort of pace. So have the confidence, have the organization behind you. You've dealt with the technology. You've dealt with, how you're going to migrate desk phones, do bulk logins of desk phones, how you're going to re-provision, you've got all that. You've got your monitoring in place. That's all down and done. It's then just how do you have confidence? That's the prereqs. Who would I say don't do it? People that don't have those prereqs. But try and find the appetite to go fast, because it makes you design out inefficiencies.
Well, thank you, Robbie, for answering my questions. You have a wealth of knowledge, so I must share that with the panel and open it up to any of them who'd like to ask.
Panel.
So, anyone have any questions for Robbie?
Well, here, I'll chime in, Robbie. That's great information. I love the depth. For anybody in North America, you said plaster. That's like a Band-Aid or a bandage adhesive. So I love the UK terminology. So there you go. That's something. There you go. Something you learned today. So, okay. So here's a quick question. Because I've migrated hundreds of thousands of people, and, it's like I always learn something. So what's the one thing that you didn't know at the beginning that you wish you knew and that you learned, kind of at the end of this big home office migration that now you're using going forward?
I don't know is the short answer. Things are less scary than you think. And there's certainly for the home office, and I've worked with other, multinational privates, that the concern is always the same. There's fear. What happens if? And it's never quite as scary as you think it's going to be. And the answer is always finding that fear and addressing it. We can't compartmentalize things away. The fact of the matter is, if you screw up at a home office, somebody could die. And if you can acknowledge that and respect that and focus around that and not let it paralyze you into indecisiveness, if you can lean into, that risk, then actually it's not as scary as it sounds, because the only thing you've got to do then to not kill somebody is test properly and migrate the platform properly. And you're at higher risk during migration, because that's when you are changing lots of different things. And to me, that's what always drives that, let's go faster. Let's rip off the plaster. Let's not extend this period of risk. Just get it done. I think there's sometimes an element of fear of the dark. You don't know what's there. And the only way you're going to know is turn on the lights, see what happens. Hopefully it's not a tiger. If there is, just turn it back off again.
Yeah, no. I love the go fast, because I think people think that going slow reduces risk. And to your point, that mid state where half people are on one platform, half the other, that's where the biggest risk is and the biggest pain point to the users. So I applaud you for taking this go fast, or at least have the discussions around going fast. So thank you for sharing it.
And you know what, you can often, I think if you think about what does a user look like, and you've got a user who's got a phone number, maybe they've got a geographic legacy number, maybe they're in some response groups, maybe they're, maybe in there are lots of different response groups. Once you start to look at who's in which ones, therefore who needs to move together, and then you think, or actually they might need to log into a desk phone as well. Sometimes people would go, let's migrate everyone who is, and then everyone who's in a health and safety group, and then all the users on desk phones. But then what if you've got a health and safety person who uses a desk phone, and you end up with this complexity that's like a user has to stop using desk phones for a bit, or you would re-provision every other desk phone. And then the next question is, how are we going to know which desk phones to re-provision on 3,000 floors, across a 100 million square mile area? Actually, the easy answer isn't let's do every other room, re-provisioning, MTR devices or whatever. Sometimes the answer is just, what? We just need to move everyone. And then your risk is gone, as long as you get it right. But you've got that whole migration period to get it right.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
So, has anyone else got some questions for Robbie?
I was just going to comment, I wish a lot of organizations would take that approach, rip the band-aid off and go for it. There's far too many orgs I see that are so risk adverse, as you say. They will plan, but you don't know what's around the corner sometimes, especially in like a mixed state when you are in that, moving people over or doing a migration of one V1 to V2. You just got to do it and have the support team behind you at that point to get it right if it does go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And have those people in the vendors who you don't want a vendor that's always saying, yes, that's great. Oh, you're doing a great thing. You actually want a vendor who's going to say to you, no, that's not a good idea. And I've had those conversations with Microsoft, with the other partners I was working with at the time. I have those conversations here at Accenture all the time. Sometimes I'm even the one saying it. And that's as somebody with a very high risk tolerance. You've got to have those great relationships where you can really get robust, constructive challenge. And I find that with Microsoft, as much as they do with many of our other CCaaS providers or UCaaS providers, that great relationship, that ability to have a real robust conversation about do that thing or definitely don't do that thing, that's how you avoid risk, by calling out that thing, that 1 in a million that always happens.
And there will be something, let's face it, there's always going to be something you didn't plan for or you didn't expect, and it will be there. It's how you deal with it at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think on that, people don't quantify the risk of doing nothing or the risk of stringing the project out, do they? So it's very easy to quantify the risk of doing something, but actually, guess what? You're on a really old PBX that isn't well maintained, that nobody knows the config of, that probably hasn't been patched in ages. Like there's a whole
or
bunch of
SharePoint
stuff
server online.
yeah, that's another good one. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think we all lean towards the get it done as fast as practical, but not too fast. Robbie, how's it been going? Like, you were in the Home Office for quite a long while. You've done some other organisations as well, I know. How's it been jumping over to kind of consulting?
I wish I could say it was really different, and I'm starting to think that maybe there were some anomalies at the Home Office that sort of followed my projects around. I'm gonna point the finger of blame for the for the anomalies at other people. You know what? I think there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of kind of thinking through how can we do things differently? How can we push the boundaries? How can we create new ways of working and make things better? And certainly the team I was working with at the Home Office was, very much in that mindset. And many of the corporate organizations that I work with now in Accenture have exactly the same mindset. Of course, Accenture, you know Accenture, and Accenture Song, the creative digital section that I live in. It's all about how do we create change and do change. So I think maybe because of the types of roles I ended up in at the Home Office and with the organizations I work with now, there's not that much difference. I don't know if all civil servants would say the same thing. I would leave that question hanging.
Or maybe it's a lot of running such a huge project as that. You're kind of consulting on the inside to other teams within the org, aren't you? So it's those same kind
quite.
of skills.
And there's a statistic I saw at Accenture in they've got a piece of research called CX on the Brink, Customer Experience on the Brink, and they talk about 87% of consumers, if they have a bad experience with a company, 80% of consumers are likely to consider leaving that organization. And often when I think about, as an internal technology provider, I often think about the end users as my customers, but they don't have the ability to leave. But what they do have the ability to do is make me leave. There's an element of learning from customer experience, and good principles of customer experience about personalization, about delivering on promise, about thinking through actually what your customer needs. That if you can channel that into a product-centric mindset, a mindset that looks at not just this go live, but releasing benefits and making it better and really seeing things from their perspective, they're less likely to leave you. if you can get that right, 87% of people are going to not go, and that makes them happy. It makes me happy. Bit of a meandering way of making that point, but hopefully it's most of those words in some of that, maybe in that order.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to get the perspective. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for this month's team show. I want to thank Tom, as usual, our special guest, Robbie, and the entire panel for their expert insights, and to all of you for tuning in. If you found today's discussion valuable, don't stay muted. Please like, share, and comment. We really appreciate your support. And we'll be back next month with more Teams news, ecosystem updates, and insights that matter for your collaboration strategy. So I'm Kristian McCann from UC Today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay connected.